Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Greg and this is Puddle Walkers Outdoors. Alright guys, so today I've got a brand new product from Plusinno, the 404 piece fishing lure kit. This lure box is designed to cover just about any type of fishing that a guy would like to do. This thing is loaded with hard baits, soft baits, and all kinds of hooks, sinkers, and swivels and rigs that you would need to tie other rigs. We're going to go over these baits, guys, and then we're going to go over the rigs, and I'm going to show you guys how to tie each one of these rigs, so stay tuned. Alright guys, I'm going to start off with the hard baits first. This right here, guys, is the walking bait. It's got a great paint job on it. The hooks are okay, not too bad. It's about 3 inches long, but I really enjoy the paint job. I think this thing here would work great. Second in line, guys, we got a nice little jerk bait. It's blue holographic paint. Resembles a minnow very well. I think this would work great in the creek or river. It's about 3 inches long. It's designed with 2 hooks. Alright guys, so you're also going to find this crankbait inside the box. It's gold with green on top. It looks like it's about a 5 to 9 foot diving crankbait. There's also this popper inside there, guys, and one of the things I found interesting about the popper is actually the mouth shape. See, it's got a regular mouth like a popper would have, but it's got 2 slots on each side of it so water can blow through it. I think that's really neat. There's also a rattle trap. It's got a nice minnow profile to it, black stripe down the side of it, white and gold paint. It's even got a divot right here at the top of it. I believe that's going to adjust some kind of way that flows in the water. Very interested in seeing how this guy here actually performs. In the box, guys, you'll also find about a 2.5, maybe 3-inch frog. Last but not least, guys, the last hard bait you'll find in the box is this beautiful spinner bait. It's one of my favorites. It's a 3/8 ounce size, and it's got 2 willow blades on the side of it. This is a great lure. I know this thing catches fish. Also inside the box, guys, you're going to find an assortment of plastics. Most of these are paddle tail swim baits. We'll start out with this black and white one right here first. It's a lot like a Kitech to me. It's got the paddle, it's got the rib body. These are excellent. It's about a 2.5 inch. Hey guys, there's also going to be a chartreuse white and an orange and white paddle tail regular swim bait. The chartreuse don't show up well in the green screen, so we're not going to go over it. The chartreuse is a 3-inch, and the orange here is a 2.5 inch. There's also a gold and black curly tail grub, 2.5 inch, and there's also an orange and pumpkin seed 3-inch curly tail. And also inside the box, guys, you're going to find everybody's favorite, the Cinco, the stick worm, whatever you call it, 3-inch wacky. Alright guys, also inside here there's a whole assortment of hooks, sinkers, swivels, new rings for the lures, I mean just everything. And I'm going to show you a few different set of my favorite type of rigs, and then a couple other rigs that you can tie with this kit alone, guys. Alright guys, the first rig we're going to start out with is a classic, and that's a Texas rig. And for a Texas rig, you're going to need 3 things. You're going to need a bullet weight, you're going to need an extra wide gap hook, and you're going to need soft plastic. This is typically ran with a Cinco, or you can also use a crawl. Those are the most typical plastics used for these, either creature bait or the stick bait. Alright guys, so the first thing you want to do for a Texas rig is you want to take your weight, and you want to make sure that your weight is actually the size of weight that you want to use. You don't want to use a massive weight for a little plastic, you don't want to use a little weight for a little plastic. You want to keep them kind of variations of it. Plusinno took the time. I don't know if we'll be able to focus in on this right here or not, but they actually took the time to actually mark these weights. I think that's pretty cool. I believe that's for 5 grams, because I saw ones that were 3.5s and ones that were 1s. So pretty cool right there. So for the 3-inch weight, or the 3-inch worm, this is about the size of weight that we're going to want. As you see, these sit together. That kind of finishes out the tip of it. We know those right there are going to move together great. This weight's going to pull this here down the way I want it to. It's not going to yank it down. It's not going to leave it floating for too long. All right, the first thing you want to do is you want to take your weight and your line, and you want to feed the line right through the center of the weight. And it'll leave you with a weight just sitting just like that right there. Now normally, guys, step 2 would be adding a hook. For most people, that's what they're going to do. They're just going to put a weight on there. They're going to put a hook on there. But you can jazz it up a little bit with a bead. A bead is going to prevent the weight from smashing down on your knot, and keeping the weight from just like beating up your knot and causing damages to your knot. So you can add a bead, and one of the cool things is that Plusinno added inside this kit were these beads with fish eyes on them, which I think is so stinking cool. So we're going to put one on there so I can show you guys what it looks like. It's a pretty well known fact that fish really love fish eyes. I don't know why, but baits with fish eyes always seem to get bit more. Now guys, we're going to add our hook on. There's a couple knots that you can do. You can do a polymer knot. You can do whatever kind of knot you want. A uni knot, a Berkeley knot, whatever. Just for good times, we're just going to use a basic fisherman knot. You're going to slide a line through the hook. I like to put my finger in between there and kind of pinch it with these fingers. And then at this point here, I'm just going to twist the line around. I like to go around like 10 rotations depending on the line. If it's 10 pounds or more, I'm going to do 10 rotations. If it's smaller line, like 6 pound or something like that, I'm going to do more rotations. So the thicker the line, the less rotations that you want. All right, now you're going to take this tag in. So you've got her all twisted like that. You're going to take your tag in and you're going to stick it right through that hole that you made with your finger. And then you're going to take it back through the loop, just like that right there. And then you're going to cinch that down. Normally you'd want to get this wet, but we can just do it because we're not going to try to catch any fish with this knot. So if it doesn't cinch down perfectly for us, then that's fine. All right, so then you got your knot. You're going to have your little tag end right here. You want to cut that little tag end off. Okay guys, so the rig tied up without anything on it, you're going to have this right here. So you got your weight, you got your hook, you got your little bead in there with the eye. Looks pretty good just as is, right? Okay, now we're going to add our plastic onto it. Since we're Texas rigging this, we're just going to hook this up worm style. We're not going to do a wacky rig. We're going to save the wacky rig for a few rigs here in a few. All right, so if you look at your stick bait, you're going to notice that the center is actually off center a little bit. You see that it's got this little body part. We've got a long section coming off here. And then we got a short section coming off of right here. I like to use this short section right here for the top, and then I consider this right here the bottom body. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the tip of the hook and you're going to sink it in to the center of the bait. But you're only going to want to bring it through as far as the shank is on the hook. Now, every shank on a hook is going to be some kind of variation of its own little length. Some of them are long, some of them are really short. So we only want to go in that far. So we're going to take it. We're going to push it in like this. Then we're going to hook it around. And then we're going to slide it down. And this is why we wanted that groove, because once we twist this around, we want it to sit like that right there. Okay, that's nice and straight right there. Now we're going to take the rest of this hook right here. We see that it needs to go in right here in the center of that body. Pinch this up a little bit, and then we're going to push it all the way through, let it come out the other side, and you can leave it just like that if you want, or you can pinch the worm upwards a little bit, and then if you pinch it up a little bit, you can kind of let the body fall back down on the tip of the hook, and then that gives you a weedless presentation. And if a fish bites onto that, he's actually just going to blow the plastic right off the hook when you set the hook. Okay, so it is perfectly fine to Texpose your hook into the body like that, and then you can fish grass and stuff like that a little more confidently. Because when you're using something like the Texas rig, like this right here, as you see now with the little bead eye on there, so we can actually push that up over our fishing knot and let the plastic actually protect our knot. And then we got that bead on top. That does look cool. So whenever you throw this out, this is going to go through the water, the weight's going to drop and hit the bottom, and then whenever your bait's going to slowly sink down like this. Boom. So you're going to have like this minnow look with your worm, you know, with that eye on there. That already makes it look like kind of a minnow. That's really cool. I really like those beads. All right, guys, that's the Texas rig. Let's move on to the next one. All right, guys, the next one up is going to be the Carolina rig. The Carolina rig is going to involve the same thing that the Texas rig involved, but we're going to add a swivel and a couple feet of line. All right, guys, so the first thing we want to do again is feed on our weight. We're going to keep the same weight just for simplicity's sake. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to take a swivel. This is a swivel. If you don't know what one looks like, it's a little barrel with a piece of wire with two twisty ends on it. It allows you to connect two different size lines or even the same size lines together. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take this line and we're going to connect it to this swivel. So you guys seen about Bank Fishing Adventures, that's who's on here in the back. All right, guys, this is what you should have now. You should have a weight, and you should have a swivel, and then you should have no line at the end of it, and you're like, Greg, what am I going to do now? Now guys, we're going to take a foot of line and we're going to tie it onto the end of this. Now guys, so I know it was looking, I cut a piece of line off of the line before I got started. That's what I normally do. I use the same line. I usually just cut about 12 inches off of my main line, and then I'll tie up my swivel and stuff, and then once I'm done with that, I'll tie on this line. I usually do a polymer knot on the first one. I put the swivel on with the polymer knot, and then I'll do a fisherman knot with the second knot on the other side. No in particular reason, that's the way I like to do it. I usually use a polymer knot. That's usually my go-to knot. I'll show you guys how to do the polymer knot here soon on the rig, because there's a rig I do that I use the polymer knot for. There we go. Let's swivel, cut my tag line off, and we'll get on to the next step. All right, the next step, guys, you guessed it, we're going to attach our extra wide gap hook to the end of our line. And we're not going to just tie this anywhere. We're going to tie this where we actually want it, because now we get to see our swivel right here. I'll try to step back here. You can see our swivel, and we got our hook down here. We want to have some distance between that. I like it somewhere between 8 and 12 inches. Some guys like it between 12 and 16. Some girls like it just 6. It's all fine, guys. Any size doesn't really matter. All right, now this is what we got. We've got our weight up there, and we got our hook way down there. And you guessed it, when you throw this out, the weight's going to hit the bottom, and then the swivel's going to keep the bait from moving, and it's going to get into a suspended and more of a slow drop. Like say you put a Nico on here that floats, it's going to sit up in the water column. If you got a big old salty packed bait like a Guggen bait, then it's going to hit the bottom like a rock. All depend on how you want to run this. If you want it to be a slow sinking bait, you're going to want to use a bait that is more a little bit less on the salt pack style. If you want it to stay on the bottom, you should have just stayed with the Texas rig. This rig here is to kind of keep your bait in that suspended section. All right, I like to use, that's right, a worm, a crawl, or the 3-inch grub. So you're going to take your grub, you're going to hook it just like your worm. You're going to take it, you're going to pop it in there, you're going to pop it out the other side, you're going to slide it up and around. And you see that's going to come out about the second little hump there. Stick it on through there, pop it on up, bam, you got your grub just like that right there. So you're going to cast this out, the sinker's going to hit the bottom, and then you're going to have this grub and that curly tail just curling down to the bottom. If you're fishing a current for like smallmouth, then you're going to have this curly tail grub here kind of staying up in it, and you're going to hop this right here along, and it's going to jerk that bait along as it stays in the water column, keeping it off the bottom. Texas rig, the weight's going to be up close, it's going to pull the weight all the way down, and you're going to bounce it. You know, Texas rig is kind of more for like a crawdad effect. Carolina rig kind of gives you more of a bait fish in the water column effect. All depending on what you're fishing, what kind of structure you're fishing, what kind of situation you're in, to whether if you want to use a Texas rig or a Carolina rig. All right, guys, let's move on to the next one. All right, guys, the next rig up, I don't think really needs any introduction. It's probably one of the most prolifically used setups in professional bass fishing and just bass fishing in general. If you don't know this rig, you're about to know this rig. And if you don't know this rig, I highly suggest you go look it up right after you watch this video. And it is the Dropshot. All right, guys, the Dropshot is consisted of 3 pieces. Your Dropshot weight. Yeah, if you don't know what a Dropshot is, you've probably seen these kind of little funky looking weights and wondered, what are these for? What is this weird looking thing for? Then you're also going to need a Dropshot hook. All right, guys, that's one of the things I see people do wrong a lot of the times is they don't use a Dropshot hook. They'll use a worm hook, or they'll use an extra wide gap hook, and you really don't want to do that. And the reason is why the bass will annihilate these rigs. And when they do, they will swallow that hook. And if you're not a catch and release guy, then no big deal if you kill the fish, because you're going to take him home and toss him in the skillet anyways. But if you're a catch and release guy like me, then you really need to follow all the practices that is going to cause the least amount of harm to the fish. And if you're going to throw a drop shot, you need to use a drop shot hook. And this is what a drop shot hook is. You see right here, this little bitty guy kind of looks like a circle hook for catfishing, but it's not. What it really is just a small hook that you can wacky rig a worm on. Everybody almost always wacky rigs a worm, or they nose hook a fluke whenever they use the drop shot. There's a lot of things you can throw on there, but the ones people do the most is nose hooked flukes and wacky rig stick baits. And I'm going to show you those right now. All right guys, so there's two types of knots that you can use while using the drop shot. You can use the dropper's knot, which I think is actually probably the better knot to use for it, but not the one I normally use. I usually use a polymer knot. And the reason why is because the drop shot is not something that I start out with, and a dropper's knot is just, it's a lot of extra steps, and it's a little more difficult to tie when I'm walking a bank versus just popping a polymer knot in really quick. So the first thing I like to do, guys, is I like to tie my sinker right on. Okay, the sinker goes right to the very end of the line, and you can do whatever kind of knot you want on that. For this one here, we're going to do the polymer knot because that's what I like to use on the drop shot. Okay, so on a polymer knot, you're going to fold your line over top of itself and make sure you give yourself enough. All right, you really can't go over too much. And then you're going to take it and you're going to feed it right through the hole. Okay, some people will do it like this right here, in case that's too difficult for you. Braid folds in half real easy, so braid is what I normally do a polymer knot with, and so it's not an issue. The monofilaments and the copolymers and stuff, they don't fold as well. So all you really want to do is fold the line through and bring it back around. So that's what you got. Okay, you got the weight on there, you got the line fed through there twice. If you move your finger out of here, the weight's going to fall off, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take these two lines and the tag line and the main line, and we're just going to do a simple overhand knot, right? So bring it over, take it back through itself, right through the center of it, just like that. And then you can snug it down if you want. It don't really matter. Pull it down there like that, you're going to have something like that. It's a sloppy knot, sorry guys. All right, then we're going to just feed the line over top of everything and bring it back over. And then you're going to wet it and you're going to cinch it down. I did that so wrong. And I left a loop in my line. I apologize, guys. That's a nasty knot. I can't clean it up either because it doesn't want to slide. Why? Because I didn't get it wet. This is why you get the line wet. There. Now we'll act like we did it right. Alright guys, once you get the weight tied on there, that's what you're going to have right there. You're going to have the weight at the end of your line, and it's just going to be dangling. The next thing we're going to do, guys, we're going to measure up just about how far we want to drop from. So we're going to take a weight. I usually like to go about 12 inches or so, sometimes maybe 6 inches. You never know. I always start about a foot off like that right there. You're going to take that line, and you're going to pinch it in half just like that. Give yourself a little loop, okay? You're going to take that pinched line, and you're going to push it through the center of that hook. All right, guys, so once we get it through, all you're going to want to do is just tie a simple overhand knot. Again, just like we did on our polymer knot on our sinker. Just like so. And then we're going to feed the hook back through it, right? You're going to want to wet that to keep from burning it. We're going to cinch it down. All right, guys, so when you're done, you're going to have your hook right here, and then you're going to have your weight down here. Try to get back here so we can see the whole thing in one frame. That right there, if they consider trigger on. Trigger off is with the hook facing down. So if you're going to nose hook a fluke on the drop shot, what you're going to do is you're going to do it just like what it sounds like. You're going to take your hook, and you're just going to nose hook it right to the front like that. And at this point, you're going to throw it out in the water. Of course, the buoyancy of the bait in the water is going to hold the hook out here like this. Your drop shot's going to hit the bottom, and that's going to keep you there. And then from there, you can just bounce this along just like that. Look like a swimming fish. You just want to find out what the level the bass are wanting it at. You know, if they're wanting at 6 inches or if they're wanting at 20 inches. Whatever that height is what you're going to set the weight at. And this is how those guys are busting them big bass guys out there with them live scopes and stuff that they're using. You find them on a live scope, you set you up a drop shot rig like this right here, you set the right height that they're sitting at, and then you just drop shot this in front of them until they take a shot at it. All right, guys, another way you can run the drop shot is a wacky rig, and this is probably one of the most favorite ways of most people. And a wacky rig is very simple, guys. You're going to take this guy right here, And you're going to find that center slot, and these ones here have actually got a little groove. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's actually a groove right there that you put the hook in. You're going to take it, you're going to pop it right through there, just like that right there. And then you're going to throw it out there, and you're going to dang-a-lang that right there, just like that. You see this is off a little bit. It doesn't really want to weigh right. We can throw this more in the center, but I'm going to show you what you really want to do. At this point now, you want to add a nail weight. I don't know if you guys ever seen a nail weight or not, but a nail weight is something that you're going to put inside of here. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get on the internet and you're going to want to order some nail weights. No, you're not, because this kit has nail weights in it. So you're going to see these things inside the kit, guys. These are nail weights. This is what these are for. Let me open it up real quick. I wasn't ready, guys. And now, guys, from here, we'll take our nail weight and we're going to push our nail weight right into the end of it, just like that, all the way until it disappears into the bait. And then at that point, now we've got a bait that's sitting level, and when we hop it, see how much more action it gives it now? Because now it's got that weight on the end. So now you get jiggle on the front, jiggle on the back. Could you imagine throwing that in front of a bass and just lightly bouncing that? Look at that crazy action. Just that right there. Just a simple worm hook, weight on the bottom, and a weight in the side of it. And you can rig these in different ways as well. If you want, you can take this right here and you can do it center like this. And again, leave the nail weight in there to help with action. You can leave it like this, and you can push the nail weight out, you know, because these nail weights they don't have to stay in that bait forever. You can grab it and pull it right back out. Do it right there, and now you got a more even, see, it's got a little more even flap on both ends. So a lot of things you can do with the drop shot. You see why it's so useful. And you see why it's so useful with the nail weight, being able to adjust the action and how you want this thing to move in the water. And so that's the drop shot, guys. Let's move on to another rig. Next one up is my favorite, and this one here, guys, is what is called the donkey rig. All right, guys, the donkey rig, or the double fluke rig, is a little bit more of a high level or a little bit more advanced level fishing technique. It's going to involve 2 extra wide gap hooks. You're going to need another swivel, and you're going to need at least 2 flukes. All right, guys, let's get tying this thing. All right, guys, first thing you're going to do is you're going to start by removing about 18 inches of line from your main line and setting it off to the side for later. All right, step 2, guys, you're going to take a swivel, and you're not going to tie it off this time. You're actually going to take the swivel, and you're going to just feed it onto your main line, leaving it floating just like that. The next step, guys, you're going to take one of your extra wide gap hooks, and you're going to tie it onto your main line. And there's step 1 and 2 done. We should have a swivel moving freely on the line, and we should have an extra wide gap hook at the end of the line. All right, guys, now on to step 3. All right, for step 3, guys, we're going to take that tag line or that extra line that we cut off earlier, and we're going to tie that directly onto the swivel, onto the side that's not connected to the main line. So you're going to have this going on, okay? The extra line should be tied on to the end of the swivel that is not connected to the main line. Snip off our tag line. Now the next step, guys, yeah, you guessed it, we're going to tie a hook onto the end of this main line that we started out with. Again, I like to go about 18 inches or so, you know, at least a foot of line is what you need. You need at least a foot of line. You need to have enough to keep these baits away from each other. All right, guys, 4th step, we're going to connect a hook to the end of that line that we just added. Again, you can use any kind of knot you want. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use a simple fisherman's knot. All right, this is what you should have. You should have a hook on your main line, and you should have a swivel on your main line, and you should have another hook down here at the end, just like so. All right, guys, and the final step is add your flukes. And to add a fluke, you're going to do it a lot like we did those worms earlier. You're going to take your hook, you're going to see you got the belly right here, you got the back right here. You want to go down into the belly just a little bit, enough to where you can get your hook head buried up in there. You don't want it too much, that's going to crinkle up. Push it on there just like so. Then you're gonna see where your hook needs to come through. You're gonna push it up through the back side, and then you're gonna let it sit and nestle in there. Just like that right there. Nice and smooth across the top. All right, for fun, guys, we'll use the orange one on the other end line. Hook it through the belly, just like so. Slide it up in there. This has got a groove for these to set in, so we're gonna leave it in the groove. We're not gonna bury it in there. All right, guys, and that is the donkey rig. So you've got a fluke there, and you got a fluke there. When you throw this out in the water, these actually run in tandem with each other, and the swivel allows this one here to move on its own freely, so they don't get tangled up. I know you look at it and you think it's going to get all twisted and tangled, but it really does not tangle as much as you would think, and if it does, it's as simple as moving it and twisting it over. That is the donkey rig. This moves in the water like this right here. I don't know if you've ever seen the way a fluke moves in the water, but it tends to go side to side. You wouldn't want to use a paddle tail one like this right here. You'd really want to use a fork tail one, or with this curly tail grubs, things like that. You want something that's going to drift side to side. This one here is going to go side to side. This one here is going to go side to side. One's going to be in front of the other. And this is kind of like the precursor to the Alabama rig, umbrella rig. Before the umbrella rig came out and blew up, this is what we were throwing, guys. We were throwing double flukes on a swivel line. Some guys like us up here north, we were calling it the double fluke rig, and those guys down in Alabama was calling it the donkey rig. Why? Because it caught donkeys, and it still does for those that want to throw it. It's a fun rig to use, guys. Give it a try. All right, guys, so before we run into the final rig of the video, there's a few things I still forgot. Out of all the things that we went over and talked about in this box, yes, you guessed it, there is more. All right, so you'll find an assortment of rooster tails, spoons, cast masters. If you're a trout guy, you know what these right here are. Those are awesome for trout. And then another rooster tail and a gold. And it's kind of got like the rooster tail Vibramax weighted body on it. You guys know I love rooster tails. These work great as well. We all know how to use them. Tie them on, throw it out, reel it in, catch a fish, repeat. All right, guys, let's move on to the final rig. One of my favorite rigs. It's an Indiana favorite, and that's why we have dubbed it the Indiana rig. All right, guys, this is how we catch crappie in Indiana. All right, guys, so our final rig, we're going to do the Indiana rig. What it's going to need, you're going to need 2 ball head jigs. This is a ball head jig right here. This is very simple. This is probably one of the most effective lures that you could possibly buy. These things right here have caught everything for me. There's not a fish species around that I haven't caught using one of these when I was trying to fish for something else at least. All right, guys, to start out, what we're going to do is we're going to polymer knot one on here. Now do the polymer knot, guys. What you want to do is you want to feed the line through once, and then you want to bring it back through again for a second time, just like that. But this in particular time, guys, what we want to do is we want to give ourselves a long tag line coming off of it, because we're going to use that later. All right, once we get our long tag line, what we're going to do is we're going to come back down here to the end. We're going to do a simple overhand knot. We're going to pull this through just like that, snugging down. We're going to open this loop up. We're going to feed our bait all the way through it. We're going to make sure that this line goes all the way through. It doesn't get caught on the eye of the hook or anything. You're going to want to wet that, and then you're going to want to cinch it down just like that. Okay? And then once you have that, you're going to take your tag end, right? Because you're going to have a tag end here. At the end of this tag end, we're going to measure to where we want it, and then we're going to add our other ball head jig to the bottom. The ideal of this right here is to be able to get fish in different water column, and it also helps you find exactly where they're at in the water column. Like say you're catching most of them on the top one, then you know that they're higher in the water column, versus if you're catching them with the bottom one, then you know they're at the bottom of the water column. Okay, guys, and that's the Indiana rig right there. You got one on the bottom, you've got one up here at the top. And what you're going to do is you're going to put a grub on each one of these. And when you put a grub on, it's a little bit different than when you put the worm on. As you see, the grub has got a twisty tail to it, and so you want to keep this centered up. You see the little, it's got a crease right through here. It's going to come right down through here that makes up that line you want the hook to follow that and come out either on this side, or you're going to want it to come out the center of this side right here. And the reason why is because if your hook on these are here are off to the left or right, this tail will lose all of its action, and it'll make it track either to the left or to the right, up or down, or the body won't even twist at all. But if you center that up, and when you bring it through there, this tail is going to twirl perfectly, and that's what makes this so effective. The fish absolutely love it. So what you want to do is you want to start right up here at the top. You're just going to feed this all the way down, nice and easy. You don't want to be in a hurry. You want to poke it out through this bottom right there like that, and then you're going to push it up over the bait keeper all the way until it's snug up on there, just like that. Now we're going to do the other hook the same way. And there you have it, guys. That's the Indiana rig. You're going to throw that out, you're going to slowly reel it back in, and you're going to get two baits in the water column coming across just like this right here. Oftentimes you can run this right here during the white bass run or the crappie spawn in early spring, and you could double up. Sometimes you could double up on 12-inch plus crappie, and they'll snap you off your little 2-pound line if you ain't careful. It's one of the reasons why I don't use this anymore, is because I would oftentimes double up with big fish and they would break me off. That just breaks my heart. So I try to keep it to just one, but if you're in a spot and you're catching a lot of them and they're not a lot of them are really big, or maybe you're just bored with fishing for crappie the way you are, give this Indiana rig a shot, and it may just turn it back on for you, because this gets them fired up. All right, guys, that is a wrap on the Plusinno 404 piece. I want to thank Plusinno again for reaching out to me and allowing me to do a review on this wonderful product, guys. This is a great, great product. If you've got loved ones in your family and you don't know what to get them and they're an angler, you know, because crankbaits are crankbaits, spinnerbaits are spinnerbaits. These rigs, though, this is what's so important. So if you don't know what to get that special angler in your life, consider the 404-piece Plusinno fishing kit. I promise you, anglers of all levels are going to find use out of this box. And at $60, guys, that is a great deal. Does a lot of tackle. I mean, this is technically a tackle box all on its own. You've got a box right here full of hard baits, spinner baits, hooks, sinkers, weights, swivels, everything you need to get yourself out on the water and run that rig that you're dying to try. All right, guys, thank you. You can check the description at the bottom of the video. Click the link. It will send you over, and you'll be able to purchase this through Plusinno's website. You can also find these on Amazon, and you can use code PLG20 for extra 20% off. Thank you, guys. See you on the next one.